His father, as I mentioned, Robert Edison Fulton Jr., wrote, I think, one of the finest round-the-world travel books. And he did it, I think it was published in 1936, several years after he actually made his journey. And, you know, he has had such a beautiful heart and such a beautiful way of expressing the commonality of human experience, regardless how people thought about each other. Because one of the refrains in the book is he would be in some incredibly remote location and all the villagers would say, oh my God, don't go to the next village, you're going to get murdered, you're going to get, you know, robbed. And he would go to the next village anyway, and they would be welcoming and fabulous, but they would say, but the next village up the road, you're going to get murdered and robbed. And, you know,
or the one you just came from. How did you possibly survive?
Both, yes. How did he possibly survive? So I don't know if any of you have read One Man Caravan, but it's a beautiful book. He also carried a cinema camera on the motorcycle, and there's also a film that was put together about using his footage, and also some later footage of him. Robert used to have a P-51 Mustang and invented some, you know, amazing, how many patents he had, but amazing skyhook rescue things, and like, it was quite an adventure. But we'd love to hear some stories of that maybe weren't in the book that he might have told you.
One story that we liked as children is not in the book, and he's bumping across the Syrian plateau, and it's getting dark and it starts to rain, and it gets sandy, wet, and muddy, and he sees this light in the distance, and it turns out to be some sort of two-story hut. And as he gets closer, he's getting wetter and wetter and colder. So he pulls up in front of it, puts it on his kickstand, and walks inside. And there are 4 or 5 soldiers in there, and they're laughing and drinking coffee and sitting by the fire. And he points to his mouth like he's hungry. So they give him something to eat. And then he does this. And they try to give him some coffee, and he doesn't want any of that. And he points up like it's still raining. So they talk among themselves, and the little boy who's there goes out with a cup and scoops some water out of a mud puddle and brings it back in and hands it to him. And he looks at it, and there's something swimming around in there, and he points at that and frowns, and one of the soldiers just laughs at him and takes it and drinks it off. So he has to drink off mud puddle and all. And then he does this like he's sleepy. So they talk among themselves, and they hand him a kind of a thin blanket, and one of them starts climbing up this ladder, goes up to a trap door, and he follows up there, and they show him that just a place. They push aside some sacks and tell him to go to sleep. So he lies down, and they go down. The man goes down and closes the trap door, and they start laughing and talking again. And suddenly, there's complete silence. And he hears someone coming up the ladder. And the trap door opens, and this turbaned head comes up with a light from below and this huge beard. And the man has an enormous knife in his teeth. And my father is right there on the floor. And the man slowly takes the knife out of his teeth and raises it and cuts a sausage off the ceiling. And closes the door, and down he goes, and they start laughing and talking again. Another time, he is invited to visit the Maharaja Udaipur's huge, beautiful marble castle on the river in India. So his father was the founder of the Mack Truck Company and the president of Rolls-Royce, and he had all these sort of invitations to do things like that around the world. But meanwhile, he's 23 years old and he's dirty, and he doesn't know the Maharaja of Udaipur from anybody. And he rides the motorcycle across the moat and up into the central courtyard of this huge marble place. and all the elephants are tied there, and they've never seen or heard a motorcycle before, and they all go crazy and break all their chains and run outside and run into the town and create total havoc. And of course, it's all his fault.
Bikers are always causing trouble,
Yes.
wherever they go.
I mean, motorcycles are basically just ridden by bums and policemen, so what can you expect?
Yeah, I think we all fit that category.
Right.
Bums.
So one thing that always amazed me about that bike is that it went 40,000 miles across rough roads, and the clutch survived the entire time. I think a lot of you will appreciate that. Right.
Well, it's an amazing bike. If you take a look in there, it's the black Douglas. It has the racks on the front and the very large gas tank over the rear wheel. And there's actually photos and footage on the movie that we've got on repeat that are amazing. And I highly recommend you pick up a copy of One Man Caravan to read the full story, because it is beautifully written.
Mm-hmm.
And also take a look at the film. We'll probably have a link to the film on our website once we post the full story about Robert Edison Fulton Jr. And I wanted to thank you for loaning the bike. It really hasn't been seen. It's been shown at a couple of bike events or concours in the past, but really has never been publicly demonstrated or seen like this. So thank you very much for sharing such a precious object. Thanks, Travis. And we have our